Project Seaborn is an action RPG I'm developing in Unity, with a unique battle system that combines turn-based strategy with bullet hell action. And in this video, I'm going to be putting this battle system to the test, and creating the very first full boss fight in the game. The boss will have a lot of attacks, stages, and even a brand new system that I'm going to make, but I've got a lot of work to do before then, so let's get started. I started off my work for this month by just polishing up what I was working on in the last devlog. For a quick refresher, last devlog added combat skills to the game, which are moves you can use in combat that are unique to the different jobs in the game. For example, the ninja can throw a shuriken which ricochets between enemies. So this day I made the framework for job attributes, which are unique passive abilities that each job has. The job attribute for the ninja is that if you dodge bullets for long enough, then you enter a state of camo where all of your attacks are criticals. But on the next day, I started on the next big system that I want to implement this month, damage types. This is a sort of elemental strength and weakness system. Right now there are physical and elemental attacks, but I want to take it a step further and have sharp and blunt physical damage and fire, water, ice, energy, and poison elemental damage. Different enemies will be weak and resistant to different elements, which should add more strategy to combat and also allow me more space to make unique jobs and weapons. So I built out a pretty inspector tool for elemental damage multipliers. Integrating damage types into all of the projectile, attack performing, and taking damage functions took quite a while, but I was able to get the system fully up and running in one day. So now different attacks have different damage types. Also, if you are watching this video, then please like and subscribe. It's the best way to support development of the game right now, and it's free. And I decided to work on screen shake the next day. Game juice is important, and right now the way I handle screen shake means that all the shakes have the same length and it's annoying to add new shakes. So I made a new class which I can use to easily add screen shakes. And you can control the amplitude, intensity, and duration of each screen shake. And also on day 118, I did more back-end work with the job traits. The next day I decided that I would tackle sound effects. The game is definitely quiet right now, so I thought that I would liven it up a bit. And I used a similar method to the screen shake from earlier, with a class that makes it easy to add sound effects anywhere in the code. I also wanted to make sound effects of a slightly randomized pitch whenever you play them to add more variety, but I realized that if you change the pitch for an audio source, then it'll switch the pitches for all of its currently playing sounds, not just one, which sounds bad. So after looking around online, I created a workaround. Instead of using the function audio source.play one shot, I have created a big array of audio sources, and whenever you play a sound effect from the sound effect manager, you automatically select the first empty audio source and play the sound there with the pitch shifting. And this works great and doesn't interfere with already playing sounds. I just had to have lots of audio sources in the array, but after implementing this in the code, I got to making some sound effects. I made them for the player's weapons, killing enemies, winning combat, dashing, hurting enemies, and more. And these sound effects aren't all great, but just having them in the game makes it a lot more satisfying to play. And I got this all done fairly quickly, so I had time to also upgrade my dialogue system. Right now it's just basic text, so I decided to upgrade it using Text Animator for Unity, which is a pretty neat asset I recently picked up. So I sat down to implement it in the dialogue system and it took about 5 minutes. Done. Now dialogue looks like this. I can easily add effects to the text and stuff. I'm not sponsored, but this tool is really cool and I can't recommend it enough. On day 120, I replaced the old camo ability for the ninja with a new decoy skill. Whenever you place down this decoy, all enemies switch their target to it and you can escape, helping you get out of a sticky situation and also charge up your camo and also group enemies together, which helps with the ninja's shuriken attack. Admittedly, the skill is still a little bit bland and unfun to use, so I'm thinking of making it so you can blow up the decoy after you place it. But also on this day, I expanded the map a bit. I'm still using the same art and I need to make a lot of new art and scenery for the game in the future, but I'll be getting to that next month, so for now it's just basic sand and walls. I added even more sound effects and then I also fixed some bugs for the different abilities for the characters. And now it's time to finally start making the boss fights. I'll be making a base for bosses in the game first, and then I'll build the first proper boss after that. A boss is basically just a souped up enemy, so I'm inheriting from the enemy control script for the boss control script. The main things that sets a boss apart from different enemies are its multiple health stages, custom behavior, and a health bar, plus a start animation and a defeat animation. So I set up the start animation and health bar, and it basically just zooms in, says some stuff about the boss, and then zooms out and the fight starts. This placeholder guy is the boss for now. And now that I have a boss fight base in place, I decided to completely pivot for a bit and work on an inventory and item system. There are 5 types of items: weapons, armors, equipments, consumables, and key items. And I set up a bunch of backend things for making these assets, storing item data, and stacking items. And on the next day, I pivoted again. I guess I just wasn't too keen on focusing on anything for more than a day at a time. But I polished up Liam, who is the melee character with a ninja job, and I made a proper sprite and animation for the decoy, added some particles to some of his other skills, and also fixed a stupid bug where collision damage sometimes instantly kills enemies. And I finished up by making an explosion particle effect that I then never used in the game. Yeah, this was a weird day. On day 125, I made some UI for the consumable item menu that you use in the plan state, and continuing into the next day, I worked on setting up consumable item effects and making it so that you can use them in battle. Also, I added the basis for money into the game. In the future I'll have shops and stuff, but for now enemies can just drop a random range of money whenever they die. And on days 127 and 128, I expanded the consumable item inventory into a full inventory, with tabs, objects pulling, and stacking items. This inventory stuff is kinda boring, but will be necessary for making rewards for fights, progression, and managing equipment, which are all things I want to do soon, so I figured I would build a base right now. But it's time to get back to boss fights. I started planning out the boss fight on paper now. I went through a few concepts, starting with a fighter plane that has a shark for a head. But while that's a decent design for a boss, and I might come back to it later, I thought it might be kinda weird to have a plane floating around there for you to fight. So I instead decided to make a big crab. Specifically a big crab with some ancient runes on its back. And with this new crab enemy, that means that 50% of the enemies in the game are crabs. I guess I just really hate crabs or something. But there are two states for the crab enemy. In the first one, runes shoot energy blast while the crab can't move. And then in its second state, the crab burrows underground and pops its claw up to shoot at you. And if you deal enough damage to the claw, then the crab re-emerges stunned and you deal extra damage to it. So I started on the first mode for the boss, where the crab has the runes on its back. So I made a beautiful placeholder sprite by just doubling the size of the Dapper Snapper and adding an ugly rock thing to it. And then I made the first few attacks. One fires a few seeking bullets from the ends of the ruins. One shoots a big wave of bullets from the middle of the boss, and another shoots a shotgun blast of bullets from either claw. But the state was feeling kinda stale this time. So the next day I made the boss move towards the player slowly, which made it feel much better and more interesting. I also made objects pulling for bullets and the little particles so they spawn whenever hitting walls. And this should improve performance a bit, especially for attacks like the bullet wave that create tons of bullets. So I added the ability for bosses to have multiple modes as well as health stages now. You can randomly switch between modes, and will go through health stages whenever their health drops below a threshold. And so I started on the custom behavior for the second mode of the crab. To start this mode, the crab becomes invincible, and then it stops moving and attacking. It also creates a claw object which will be doing the attacking for the stage, and also spawns two Dapper Snapper enemies that have less HP than the usual Dapper Snapper. And I started day 131 by making a short animation for killing a boss. It's kinda glitchy with the camera zooming in and out a bunch, but I'll fix it later. Then I made the behavior for the crab claw. It's basically just its own enemy separate from the boss that performs a few basic attacks, like a burst, shotgun blast, and a seeking shot. It also teleports around the arena. Day 132, I made the boss no longer be invincible whenever you destroy the claw, and I also lowered its defense. I had to fix some weird bugs here, where it would take one hit of damage after the claw was destroyed and then just stop taking damage until going back to the ruin state. But I fixed it. It's hard to tell if I have the animations in game yet, but it's working. Day 133, I just managed so the player can no longer concentrate to enter the plan state during boss fights. So instead there is this bar that decreases, and whenever it empties, the boss switches states and the plan state starts. I think this is an interesting change of pace from the normal game, with the boss controlling the flow of combat instead of you. Plus, it incentivizes you to switch party members to adapt to the stages of the boss fight. In this boss in particular, long-range characters like Yuri the Archer work better during the first stage, while Liam and Ava work better on the second stage since they can take out lots of enemies faster. I also tried out adding the ability for enemies to lead shots based on the velocity of the player whenever they shoot. It was actually a pretty simple system to implement, but I ultimately disabled it for now as it's pretty inaccurate and honestly it doesn't really fit the boss fight. And to finish off the day, I started making some final art for the boss, texturing the runes and giving him a bunch of eyes. I set up a brand new system for the boss fight, but I think it's a system I'm going to add to all enemies in the future because it's pretty cool. Whenever you enter the plan state right now, the player is the only one that gets to do anything, but this seems a bit unfair. So I made it so that the enemies also have plan state moves that work similarly to the players. I think that this will help incentivize using the plan state in battle, as enemies will be buffing themselves, debuffing you, and doing other things to gain an advantage. So you should use some moves to counter theirs and then use more to get an advantage. But for now, the only move is used by the boss, and it just slightly raises his physical defense. Day 135 was spent getting the plan state system to actually function some of the time, although it's still buggy. But I also made the final sprite for the boss fights. There aren't any animations yet, but he's got big legs now. In day 136, I fixed up a few of the remaining bugs of the enemy plan state and did a bunch of polishing for the boss fights. It's not done yet, obviously, as there are no animations, but I added particle effects to some attacks as well as some crystals on top of the ruins, which release seeking bullets. And that's just about where I'm at now with the boss fight. It's not complete yet, but the gameplay is nearing its final iteration, and I think that I've already succeeded with my goal of making use of the battle system with this boss fight, as there's some basic strategy with using the plan state moves and picking which character to use of each state. Plus, I think the plan state actions for enemies are an interesting system which I'll expand on in the future. But my goal for the next devlog is actually to get a simple, playable demo out to all of you guys for free. It won't be too much content. Basically a first area with some enemies to fight and this boss fight. But over the next month, I'm going to make a bunch of environmental art, maybe some new enemies, and also things like a settings menu and a basic main menu for playtesters. So be sure to subscribe to play the demo whenever I release it. I'm mostly releasing it to gather as much feedback on the battle system as possible, so feedback will be welcome and encouraged. Also, if you want to catch up with this series and see where this game started, then be sure to check out the first 100 days of development by clicking on this end screen. But thanks for watching, bye.